Good afternoon, boys and girls. Today we are going to do a lesson on a place in Michigan called Fayette, Michigan. Fayette, Michigan is a very historical town, and today we're going to find out why. Before we begin, I want you to think back to when you were in second and third grade. I'm sorry, second and first grade. When you were learning in social studies, think about the concepts that you learned about. Think of some of those vocabulary words that you learned. And I want you to think for just a minute, what does history mean to you? Okay, now we're going to pair up with a partner and share our ideas. And we're going to write them down on a piece of paper. And then we're all going to come back together and we're going to discuss these ideas that we had about what we think history means to us. So once you get with your partner, you're going to share your ideas, write them on a piece of paper, and then we'll all get back together and share our ideas as a group. Okay, boys and girls, we have shared our ideas that we came up with in our groups. And now I think we are ready to look at our first vocabulary word, which is history. The definition of history is what has happened in the past. So that means what happened yesterday. Would that be history, boys and girls? Show me with your thumbs. Thumb up if you think history was yesterday. Thumbs down if you don't think that was history. Right, yesterday was history. It happened in the past. Where can we learn about things that happened in the past? Yes, books, pictures, sometimes TV, very good movies or TV shows will take place in the past. So our next vocabulary word is historian. Boys and girls, and a historian is a person who studies what happened in the past. So this entire unit of social studies is going to ask for us to act like historians. And we're going to think like a historian as we uncover all the exciting parts of Michigan's history. So remember, historians are kind of like detectives. They're going to look for clues about when, where, and why things happened in the past. Our next vocabulary word is a primary resource. A primary resource is a recording of an event by people who were there or saw what happened. So a primary resource might be when you are watching TV and the news is on, and maybe the reporter is interviewing someone who witnessed or saw an event that was happening. What are some other primary sources that you can think of? Yes, a diary. Yep, very good. All right, our next vocabulary word is secondary sources. Secondary sources are something that was written by a person who was not at the event. So a history textbook might be a secondary resource. What is another secondary resource you could think of? Yes. So if you were to write a book about an event that happened, like let's say you researched it, you found out a whole bunch of information about it, and then you wrote that book, but you were not right, you were not there for the event, then that would be a secondary source. You're right. Very good. Okay. So my question for you is, what year were you born? Do you know? Okay. So what year did you start school? Or how many years ago did you start school? Okay. And what grade are you in now? Right, third grade. I'm asking you these questions because that's information that you could add to a timeline, boys and girls. And that is our next vocabulary word. A timeline is a picture or a graphic that shows the order that events took place in. So, for example, maybe you were born in 1800. And then in 1802, your sister was born. And then in 1806, you started school. In 1813, maybe you graduated school or something else happened. So you list the things or the events that took place in order on a timeline. Very good. So, our last vocabulary word is decade, and that's a 10-year period of time. So, for example, from January of 1802 to January of 1812, that was a 10-year period of time. That was a decade. So, that is something you're going to need to know for when you create your own timeline later on in this lesson. For now, I'm going to pass out a map of Fayette, Michigan. That is the place that we are learning about today. And I am also going to have you take a look at that map and notice the Lake Michigan that is surrounding this area. That's very important for you to understand why Fayette, Michigan was so important in our state's history. Um, so you can hold on to that map. And I'm going to show you a video about Fayette, Michigan. But before we start that video, I want to go over two last vocabulary words. They are cause, the reason why something happened, and effect, the result of what happened. So see here we have a rainbow. And the slide previous to this one, we had the sun and the rain, which caused the rainbow. So you're going to need to know those words. So we're going to watch this video about the Fayette Historical Site and use that map for reference if you need to. And then when the video is over, we're going to come back. We're going to move on to our next activity. Okay, so now that we have finished the video, I'm going to pass out this two-sided page. And at the top it says Fayette Historical Site. So boys and girls, this whole article is about the Fayette Historical Site that we just watched the video on. So we are going to get ready to read this article together, and then you are going to pair up with a partner to complete the comprehension questions on the back. Oh, all right, boys and girls, now that we have finished watching our video on Fayette, Michigan, we are going to, and now that we have read our article here, we are going to take a look at our comprehension questions on the back side of our paper. Number one says, what are the primary and secondary sources on this page? So you and your partner will answer that with your pencil in that area below on the lines. Number two says, consider cause and effect. How did iron ore play a role in the development of Fayette? Again, you will write your answer with your pencil on the lines below that question. And number three says, using the dates provided in the article, create a timeline for Fayette in the space below. Make sure you label each point on the timeline, meaning don't forget to include the years that the events happened in. And then once you are finished with this activity with your partner, we will come back and share out our answers. All right. Now that we have shared out our answers on the comprehension page, we are ready to create our own Michigan timeline. So we are going to create this on our handout sheet. Once we are done with it, we are going to put it in our social studies notebook so that we can look at it later and help us answer some questions that we're going to come across as we are being historians and detectives. And then once we have completed our timeline, we can answer our exit ticket question. How do primary sources help us understand history? And then tomorrow we will continue on with our lesson.